With the SNAP waivers, people say, well, aren't you being a nanny state? Aren't you taking soda drinks, sugar drinks, and candy and confectionery products away from the American people? And my answer to that is, if you want to drink a bottled soda, you should be able to have that right. We live in a country where we have individual freedom. The federal government should not be paying for it through taxpayer money.
A new Supreme Court ruling is expected to allow states to cut off Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. The case wasn't directly about abortion, although Planned Parenthood is the single largest abortion provider in the U.S. Instead, it's about other health care services that its clinics provide. Those include things like cancer testing and contraception and pregnancy testing. The Supreme Court's conservative majority found that Medicaid patients can't file lawsuits to go to the provider of their choice. This is expected to cut off Planned Parenthood's primary way of fighting back against Medicaid funding cuts in court. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote that the ruling will likely have tangible effects on people's lives because other conservative states will likely follow in South Carolina's footprints and cut off that Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. Medicaid patients often go to Planned Parenthood for reproductive health care services because it can be hard to find a doctor that takes the publicly funded insurance. The decision comes amid wider efforts to defund Planned Parenthood by cutting off Medicaid funding to the organization. That includes efforts from Republicans in Congress.
This disbanding of the previous ACIP was just really reckless, and I don't think it was done with any forethought. I think replacing them with people who describe themselves as vaccine skeptics just answering questions are really hurting and sowing distrust in the American public about the effectiveness and the safety of these really effective public health interventions. Seeing this sort of an asset of public health being threatened like this has just been very difficult.
The theme is to protect or reinstate ACIP as it's meant to be, as a committee of experts who can work together and build consensus, and not just necessarily be there to do the bidding of people in Washington who do not share the opinion that vaccines are a universal good.
The Trump administration has made deporting violent undocumented immigrants a central focus, but new data from ICE suggests only a small fraction of those with serious convictions are being arrested. According to ICE's own data, obtained by NBC News, between October 1st, 2024 and May 31st, 2025, a period that spans 2 administrations, ICE had information on certain undocumented immigrants who had been convicted of serious crimes. However, the majority of these individuals had not been arrested or detained, despite the Trump administration's stated focus on removing violent offenders. According to NBC News, internal ICE data shows a total of just over 185,000 individuals arrested and booked into immigration detention centers during that time period. Of those, just more than 65,000 had been convicted of crimes. Last fall, ICE reported that over 28,000 convicted criminals, including those guilty of homicide or sexual assault, were on its non-detained docket, meaning they were known to ICE but not in custody. The agency acknowledged it did not know the exact whereabouts of all individuals. The new ICE data shows that from October 1st to May 31st, ICE arrested only 6% of undocumented immigrants known to have homicide convictions and 11% with sexual assault convictions. Nearly half of those in ICE custody have no criminal charges or convictions, according to ICE data. A senior DHS official told NBC News that arresting serious criminals is harder because of resource demands, and the agency has shifted from targeting high-risk offenders to focusing on detaining and deporting all undocumented immigrants. Representative Tony Gonzalez requested ICE data on arrest of serious criminals, noting bipartisan support for targeting the worst of the worst. While we do agree that we are a nation of laws and that all who cross our borders illegally are subject to those laws, there are levels of priority that must be considered when it comes to immigration enforcement. Every minute that we spend pursuing an individual with a clean record is a minute less that we dedicate to apprehending terrorists or cartel operatives. Gonzalez and 5 other members of Congress wrote in a letter to ICE earlier this month. We stand by President Trump to ensure our border security is restored. However, in order to truly claim success, we need to give absolute priority to every violent offender and convicted criminal illegal alien present in our nation. President Trump's border czar Tom Homan stated that federal immigration enforcement would prioritize the detention and removal of undocumented immigrants with criminal convictions. However, he also emphasized a broader approach, telling ABC News shortly after Trump's inauguration, if you're in the country illegally, you're on the table. For Shade Arrow News, I'm Lauren Keenan. If you want more on this story...
The United Nations chief warned on Thursday of a high number of armed conflicts in the world as he marked the Responsibility to Protect anniversary. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres further called on member states to remain committed to the responsibility to protect against violence. The Responsibility to Protect was adopted by the UN in 2005.
Today, we mark the 20th anniversary of the Responsibility to Protect at a time of profound global turbulence. We are witnessing the highest number of armed conflicts since the end of the Second World War. And these are marked by rising identity-based violence, widespread violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law, and deepening impunity. On this anniversary, we must recognize that the responsibility to protect is more than a principle. It's a moral imperative rooted in our shared humanity and UN Charter.
Outlining the World Summit outcome document, the principal calls on member states to protect their population from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity.
At least 29 students have been killed and more than 250 injured in a stampede at a high school in Bangui, capital of the Central African Republic. An electrical explosion triggered panic among more than 5,000 students sitting their final exams at Barthelemy Baganda High School, according to local authorities. The explosion occurred on Wednesday when power was being restored to an electrical transformer within the school premises after it malfunctioned.
The Central African Republic is to observe 3 days of national mourning after 29 students were killed in a stampede inside of their school in the capital city of Bangui after a transformer's explosion. The disaster unfolded during national exams that were being held in Barthelemy, in the Buganda High School in Bangui. An explosion from an electrical transformer on the school premises triggered panic amongst thousands of students.
A 3-day period of national mourning will be declared throughout the country in tribute to the victims of this tragedy, which has affected the entire national community.
The victims were rushed to medical centers across the capital, with some being transported on motorcycles in absence of proper ambulance services. The tragedy has sparked anger amongst the residents and parents who accused the government of negligence, citing repeated issues with the electrical transformer and also lack of maintenance.
The Central African Republic government has declared 3 days of mourning after an explosion and a stampede that followed killed at least 29 school children and injured more than 250 at a high school in the capital city, Bangui. The Prime Minister Felix Malua visited the hospital with the injured students to assess their condition. The incident left parents shocked as they sought answers. The police called me and told me to come quickly to the community hospital because my daughter was there. She is among the victims from the Barthelemy Boganda High School. That's how I came to the hospital. At this health center, she was in critical condition, and we had to transfer her here. When you have a child, you raise them to a certain age, and you have to support their schooling because they are your future. Most of the victims, including 16 girls, died at the scene after the explosion resulted in a stampede, while others were confirmed dead at the hospital. From yesterday until today, we have been on our feet. Yesterday was the worst. We managed to stabilize the situation with the arrival of security. We received 85 patients who were victims of yesterday's events at Barthelemy Boganda High School, 65 in emergency, 10 in gynecology, and 10 in traumatology. We regrettably had 15 deaths, young girls, 2 pregnant women, and 2 boys. At least 260 students were injured and being treated in various hospitals. An estimated 5,000 students were at the school for higher education exams at the time. Survivors recounted hearing a loud explosion from the transformers midway into the examination.
At least about 16 people have been killed in protests across Kenya as businesses and residents were left to clean up the devastation in the capital and beyond. The Kenyan government has termed the protests to be terrorism, disguised as dissent, and has called it an attempt at a coup. Now, the streets of Kenya were once again awash with the bitter smell of tear gas and the chilling echo of gunfire. Now, what began as a digital roar from a defiant Gen Z erupted into a violent nationwide confrontation with swathes of the capital in smouldering ruins. Now, exactly 1 year after the anti-tax demonstrations peaked with a crowd storming the parliament, Kenya found itself caught in a brutal deja vu. On Wednesday, a potent mixture of digital activism and simmering public anger boiled over. Thousands of young Kenyans, many mobilized by the rallying cry of Ruto must go on platforms like Twitter, gathered on the streets of Nairobi and other major cities, waving branches as symbols of peaceful dissent. Now, the clashes quickly escalated, transforming peaceful marches into chaotic running battles.
We are here to seek justice and also for a better Kenya.
Whole of the system. Every system is rotten, from the ministries to service providers to we need a complete overhaul.
Now, the aftermath in Nairobi's central business district is a very grim tableau of devastation. Charred storefronts gape open, exposing ransacked interiors. Business owners, from the smallest of electronic shops to large supermarkets and banks, are left rummaging through debris.
Look, everything is the ban. Yeah? So, please, government, try talking of the Gen Z. Because all this is happening because of Gen Z. So please, Gen Z, just try to sit down then to talk to the government.
We had to close. So yesterday we didn't report as we are expecting this Maandamano. So we feared our shops might be broken or your safety also. So we decided not to come yesterday. So we never came yesterday because of lack of fear.
So as Kenyans begin a painful clean-up process, the memory of Wednesday's bloody events serves as a reminder of the soaring tensions between a defiant youth movement and a government that is determined to maintain control irrespective of the cost. And our correspondent Louisa Olani has sent us this report. Listen in.
Security forces maintain a heavy presence amid an uneasy calm following the violent protest in Kenya on Wednesday to mark the anniversary of the 2024 anti-finance bill demonstrations. The protests, which became violent, saw at least 16 protesters killed, over 400 injured, including 3 officers and 2 journalists, with over 60 arrested. Nairobi's central business district is littered with debris, businesses remain shuttered, and public transport disrupted. Amnesty Kenya and Kenya National Commission on Human Rights condemned the excessive force, with Amnesty reporting most deaths were police-related. An official at the capital's main Kenyatta National Hospital said it had admitted over 100 injured people, most with gunshot wounds from either rubber bullets or live rounds. President Ruto had earlier warned that protests must respect Constitution and avoid harm, urging leaders to focus on development over division. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi. We on.
Several people have been injured as police fired tear gas canisters and rubber bullets. Protesters in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, are protesting corruption and police brutality. The protests were timed to mark the one-year anniversary of anti-tax demonstrations, in which 60 people were killed and 20 others remain missing. Parliament and the President's office in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, were barricaded with razor wire and all access roads blockaded by police. The protests, which have now spread to major cities including Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, have morphed into calls for the President to resign due to what protesters are saying is poor governance.
And we're not scared to say it. We will say it boldly. We will say it courageously. Police brutality must end and Ruto must go.
2 recent killings by the police of protesters have exasperated the situation.
Foru bejojoa yeji komile mila noejika 3 jours n'est pas mila ba continuer que kaka ebe démission et la joke gba mila jole moi dit il faut laisser elle doit venir il va faire pour lui aussi ma foi non c'est quoi c'est forcé ça c'est pas une question de chrétien mais je sais pas tu as fait pour toi il faut laisser quitter un autre va venir il va faire pour lui aussi fort s'il te plaît libère le Togo le pays c'est pas pour toi. C'est pas pour famille Nyansingbe. Laissez le pays. Nous les citoyens, on va diriger le pays.
China is unveiling one of its tiniest military drones yet, a mosquito-sized aircraft apparently designed for battlefield surveillance. Researchers at China's National University of Defense Technology showed off the microdrone during a state television broadcast. The tiny unmanned aircraft fits between 2 fingers. It flies using a pair of flapping, leaf-shaped wings and can perch using 3 hair-thin landing legs. The claim is the drone's compact size allows it to stay hidden while gathering intelligence in urban or sensitive environments. The drone packs power systems, sensors, and control circuits into its tiny frame, pushing the limits of micro-robotic engineering. China's new microdrone joins a growing global race to field micro-UAVs. Norway's Black Hornet, widely used by Western militaries, offers a palm-sized platform. The latest Black Hornet 4 features enhanced battery life, improved wind resistance, and a longer range, earning a U.S. Defense Department Blue UAS Refresh Award this year. The U.S. Air Force is also working on micro-UAVs, though no operational versions have been publicly fielded so far. Beyond the battlefield, scientists see potential for minute drones in fields like medicine, disaster response, and environmental monitoring. Harvard's RoboBee project, for example, developed insect-sized drones that can fly, land, and even transition between water and air. But on the battlefield, these ultra-small drones could become a new tool for silent surveillance, giving militaries eyes where traditional systems can't reach.
The EU leaders have gathered at a summit in Brussels. 2 issues are on top of the agenda, and this includes Europe's defense priorities and US tariffs. The summit is being held just a day after NATO's European members gave in to Trump's demand of increasing the defense spending to 5% of their respective GDPs. The threat of the United States abandoning the military alliance is now pushed for heightened military expenditure. But the reality is now beginning to set in. How will European nations afford this substantial increase in defense spending amidst economies that aren't exactly growing very much? Now, Europe's problem has been compounded by Trump's reciprocal tariff threat, which hangs in balance. Now, Donald Trump first slapped retaliatory tariffs in April, but then suspended them for a period of 90 days to allow countries an opportunity to strike a deal.
The problem is that on behalf of the United States, we have a heavyweight deal maker. On our side, the European Union, we have a light capacity and capability leaders to negotiate. So the problem is that the American negotiator is very strong. Our negotiators are rather weak. That's the problem.
Now, Spain is the lone NATO member that has secured an agreement to opt out of the 5% defense spending target, but the tariff challenge still looms pretty large, even if Spain's Prime Minister calls the United States a friend.
From a more political point of view, what I want to convey is that Spain is an open country. It is a country that is friendly to its friends, and we consider the United States a friend of Spain.
For Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz, it is an uphill political and economic battle right at the beginning of his term.
This is my first time here. We have a large number of topics to discuss, of course the reverberations of yesterday's NATO summit and the consequences for the European Union. We will have to talk about the competitiveness of European industry.
Now, Trump's tariffs are suspended only till the 9th of July. The European Union has little time left to negotiate and to determine as to what cards it can play. The ongoing summit in Brussels is critical for the bloc to decide its next move.
European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic.
Are you interested in restarting negotiations with Iran? And if so, have they resisted?
So, I'm not. The way I look at it, they fought, the war's done, and, you know, I could get a statement that they're not going to go nuclear. We're probably going to ask for that, but they're not going to be doing it. But they're not going to be doing it anyway. They've had it. They've had it. Now, maybe someday in the future we'll want that.
But you're in no rush. Is that right? It sounds like the door's open, but
I'll tell you what, look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not. The only thing we'd be asking for is what we were asking for before about we want no nuclear, but we destroyed the nuclear. In other words, that's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come. And so I don't feel very strongly about it. If we got a document, wouldn't be bad. We're going to meet with them, actually. We're going to meet with them.
Sanctions against Russia remain one of the most effective tools for limiting its aggression. What's needed now is a truly strong 18th package of EU sanctions against Russia. The key targets should be Russia's oil trade, its shadow tanker fleet, Russian banks and other financial instruments, and the supply chains that bring equipment or parts for making weapons. The facts are clear. For Russia's appetite for war to shrink, its oil revenues must shrink. So please support further steps to lower the price cap on Russian oil. And a cap of $45 could help move toward peace, of course, but for real lasting peace, and we shared it yesterday, and with all the partners, Europe partners, United States partners, a cap of $30 per barrel is needed to block Russia's ability to fund its aggression.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has appeared on video for the first time since U.S. airstrikes targeted Iran's nuclear program over the weekend. In the message broadcast on state TV, Khamenei warned the U.S. will definitely pay a heavy price if it strikes Iran again. The video marks his first public address since U.S. warplanes bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites. It's unclear when the video was recorded, but in it, Hamani claimed Iran won a victory over both Israel and the U.S. despite the strike. His comments followed Trump's announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran 2 days after B-2 stealth bombers dropped 30,000-pound bombs on multiple Iranian nuclear sites. Iran retaliated Monday, launching a missile attack on the U.S. airbase in Qatar. No casualties were reported. Hamani downplayed the impact of the strikes and did not mention Iran's nuclear program. According to the New York Times, his remarks were likely recorded after this missile attack, which he claimed caused some damage. The Islamic Republic was victorious and, in retaliation, delivered a hand slap to America's face, he said in the video, as reported by the AP. He also warned that Iran might strike again if needed. The American regime entered into a direct war because it felt that if it did not enter, the Zionist regime would be completely destroyed. But it did not gain anything from this war, Hamani said. President Trump, though, maintains that the B-2 bombing mission successfully destroyed Iran's nuclear program, dismissing a defense intelligence report suggesting the strikes only delayed the program by a few months.
The intelligence says we don't know. It could have been very severe. That's what the intelligence says. So I guess that's correct. But I think we can take the we don't know. It was very severe. It was obliteration.
במקורותינו כתוב, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אנחנו נלחמנו בעוז נגד איראן והשגנו ניצחון גדול. והניצחון הזה פותח הזדמנות להרחבה דרמטית של הסכמי השלום. אנחנו עובדים על כך במרץ, לצד שחרור חטופינו והכרעת החמאס, יש פה הזדמנות, חלון הזדמנויות שנפתח, ואסור להחמיץ אותו. אסור לבזבז אפילו יום אחד.